The Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs has a new member, and he's a familiar face here at Detroit Public Television. Aaron Dworkin, founder and president of the Sphinx organization, was named to the council by Governor Snyder. Aaron's organization focuses on youth development and diversity in classical music. The group's annual competition features Black and Latino string players, and the finals concert is broadcast and webcast on this station. I'm pleased to welcome Aaron Dworkin to American Black Journal. Aaron, you've been at this 17 years. It's been an amazing journey. Tell me something about, fast forwarding now, 17 years later, what kind of impact is the Sphinx organization actually making on not only the performers, but also the whole culture around classical music and audience building?
Well, it's really been a critical issue, the lack of inclusion in not just classical music, but the arts as a whole. Mm-hmm. There is, I think, a host of different solutions that we've tried to employ to be able to help make a difference. Certainly providing access for young people is a key part of it, but also building the diversity among the artist pool themselves. And so with our national competition, we're really looking at how we have increased the numbers of young students of color to the top music schools. Our alums have gone on to every single top 10 major music school in the country. We've had a host of our laureates and alums that now sit with major orchestras.
Mm-hmm. I do want to talk about one in particular because it feels like 100 years ago. I had the pleasure of interviewing Melissa White. And at the time, she was about to go to, it was one of the first Sphinx competitions, I believe.
Absolutely.
And she hadn't even performed yet, and she was she's a violinist, and just talking about her journey there and the excitement of being able to perform and to be in a room with all of these other Black and Latino musicians doing the same thing that she's doing. Let's fast forward. Tell me about her career.
Yeah, well, Melissa started with us when she was 13 years old.
Wow.
And since then, she has gone on. She's had a tremendous career. She ended up being able to go to the Curtis Institute of Music, one of the most prestigious music institutions. And then she was a founding member of the Harlem Quartet, which now tours, does residencies around the country. They just got done doing a tour in Africa, and so are one of the leading quartets in our nation.
And she's been on Grammy Award-winning
performances, absolutely.
Exactly.
And they've performed on the Today Show. So both in terms of media and in terms of the performances that she does as an individual, as well as with the quartet.
Now she's a major talent, period.
Yeah.
What did Sphinx have to do with that trajectory for her?
Well, a host of different things. One of the things, too, that's interesting with the young people who now come into any number of our various programs is that they say that they've never known a world without Sphinx. And what they're referring to is that when I grew up, I was the only person of color in all of the musical circumstances that I found myself in. And they have a context, they have a community that they now are able to join, and a network and a peer group and mentors and role models that they can look to. And we've been able to play a part in a host of all of those activities. So we take someone like Melissa, initially the ability to compete with her peers from around the country who come together to not only perform, but perform music by composers of color. Less than 1% of the works performed by American orchestras are by any composer of color. So they highlight those works. And then, of course,
they can't find those composers. They don't exist.
Exactly, right. Exactly. And then we provide them with the opportunities and the scholarship to be able to attend the top music institutions and then to be able to carry on their
you provide them sort of a cohort, a peer group, a mentoring group, and then also a bit of a pipeline for career opportunities going out there.
And make no mistake about it, money and resources.
Yeah, right.
They need help to be able to attend the top music schools. They're not able to get enough scholarship support. We all know what's happened in terms of music in our schools and the opportunity to be able to have private lessons. So all of those aspects of your musical development require resources.
I took piano lessons for 5 years. I have no ear for music. I was awful. I cried at the piano trying to take lessons, and I will tell you to this day, when I hear someone playing a piano, I so appreciate what I'm hearing, not just from that pleasure, but from the technical standpoint, because I could never do it. But having the lesson really opened my mind to the art and the science of the music.
It's critical, and this gets so beyond, obviously we have a key goal to build inclusion and diversity in the arts and in classical music. But separate from that, the value of a classical music education and music education overall for our young people is critical. It affects every other academic performance.
Right.
It affects graduation rates. It affects college matriculation. All of these aspects have been proven to significantly increase if there is the study of an instrument at a young age.
Listen, I don't want you to get away without talking about Sphinx Con.
Yes.
So
One of the issues that we have in the arts is that inclusion and the lack of inclusion is a problem across the board. And there are very few best practices, there's very few examples, there's very few communication between institutions about what will actually work. And so we developed the annual convening to bring all of the leaders in the field together here in Detroit every February to talk about the issues of inclusion and diversity in the arts and to share those best practices, to share those ideas, and to challenge each other's ideas so that we can have a far greater impact than just Sphinx's direct programming ourselves.
So you're really looking at changing the whole way arts education and arts programming is delivered.
Absolutely.
You're looking for institutional systemic change here.
Absolutely. And to give you just the snapshot in classical music or in orchestras, when Sphinx was founded, about 2% of America's orchestras were Black and Latino combined. We've been able to have an effect to double those numbers, but what that means is now we're about 4%.
Yeah.
And what that means in terms of a reality is that in the 1960s, the New York Philharmonic hired Sanford Allen, the first African American ever in the history of the orchestra. Today, there are no African American members of the New York Philharmonic.
Wow.
There are no Latino members of the New York Philharmonic. The Chicago Symphony 10 years ago hired its first African American ever in the history of the orchestra. He remains the only African American
So we
member of
still,
that orchestra.
why is that happening? How come we're not moving faster?
Well, that's a big part of a lot of our work, and we think it's the combination of a host of things. One, we need to build the pool, and we need to provide more access at an early age for young people to study. We need to be able to provide a continuity so that they can develop through, attend college, and then have professional development so that they're prepared to be competitive for these positions. But also, we must change the psychology and the approach of our existing arts institutions to understand the importance and the priority of diversity. The last thing that we want to have happen is what's happening now in the sports world, where orchestras are highlighted by the media because of not what is a minimal underrepresentation of the communities in which they reside, but a stark absence of the representation of the communities in which they reside.
Is there a pervading attitude that there just aren't the quality kinds of musicians that they need to perform in their orchestras?
I don't believe that there is, kind of rampant racism going on in the leadership of orchestras. But as I mentioned actually in a presentation I gave, that there is a profound sound of silence that exists in that it is not considered to be a priority. There are those who, without kind of racial views, feel that there is just not the pool of talented musicians of color. But then our first question is, are you acting like any self-respecting business if they were based in Detroit and only 2% of their customer base and 2% of their employee base was African American? What would that business be living and breathing until they were better reflective of the community in which they reside, because it's in their business interest
Now,
to
but
do
orchestras have been under the gun of just trying to raise the money and literally stay alive. Are you suggesting that they need to take on a recruitment and development task as well?
What we're suggesting is that the answer to a lot of their challenges is inclusion and diversity. If they were to be more inclusive and more diverse, what would happen to their subscriber base? If they were more inclusive and diverse, what would happen to their donor base? If they were more inclusive, what would happen to the appeal of their product to the
To a larger
community
audience.
in which they reside?
Absolutely. You've got a program coming up, Sphinx Stars. You want to tell me about that too?
So we have so many of our young people here in Detroit where our national competition, just because of the logistics of having students apply from all over the country, it's hard for any one city to have a large contingent. And we wanted to make sure that many of our young people here in Detroit have that opportunity to compete with their peers, to excel, and ultimately be showcased and receive scholarship and prize money awards to be able to further their musical development. So we launched Sphinx Stars Detroit. And so this is only for our Detroit region. It's all instrument categories. And now we're heading into the finals, and those will be aired in just a couple months here on Detroit Public Television. And we're incredibly excited. The breadth and the depth of talent that exists here in our community is incredible. And this not only speaks to all of us here in our region and shows us who we are as a music city, but it also demonstrates to the country that we're not the caricature that they often like to portray.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you said that because it does add to the breadth and highlights young people doing amazing things. So we got to make sure that the audience stays tuned here and come back to Detroit Public Television so they can see the Sphinx Stars Detroit. That is extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Well, that's our program for today. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.